In this video, we're going to cover a couple of different operations because we're going to talk about multiplying and dividing decimals and fractions. First, we have multiplying decimals. Anytime you have multiplying decimals, it's not necessarily like adding and subtracting to line up your decimals. But in fact, what we will actually do is take our 3.12 and then starting from the right, fill in our second integer or our second value, 1.5, just because it'll keep all of our numbers lined up, make them easy to multiply just like regular numbers. So 5 times 2 would be 10, carry the 1, 5 times 1 is 5, plus 1 is 6, 5 times 3 is 15. Now I need to do my next value. 1 times 2 is, I need my 0 placeholder. 1 times 2 is 2, 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times 3 is 3. I add those two columns together. 0, 6, and 2 is 8. 5 and 1 is 6. 3 and 1 is 4. Then I need to count how many places after the decimal I have in my original values. I have 1, 2, 3. And so starting from the right, I will move 3 units over. 1, 2, 3. So my final solution would be 4.68. I no longer need this extra 0. Looking at problem 5, 6.2 divided by 5. A common mistake I often see is the 0.5 getting put in the radicand and 6.2 on the outside. What's actually taking place is 6.2 is getting divided by 0.5. So we could simplify the fraction and reduce that way, but we need to remember that it's the 6.2 that's actually getting divided up into littler pieces. So that's what's going to go into our radicand. 6.2 divided by 0.5. Now the first thing we do when we're dividing a decimal is to move our decimals over. So I needed to move that decimal over one space, so I will do the same thing to whatever's in my radicand. That realigns my decimal point for my solution, so I want to go ahead and put it up in my solutions bank before I forget where it goes. Next step would be to figure out how many times 5 goes into these values. So 5 goes into 6 one time, times 5 is 5. Difference is 1, bring down my 2. 5 goes into 12 2 times, 2 times 5 is 10, difference of 2. Now I need to bring down zeros to see whether or not this number is going to continue on and on and on, or if it's going to have a termination. 5 will go into 20 4 times. 5 times 4 is 20. That will give me 0. Once I've gotten to a 0, I know that I have now a terminating decimal solution, and my solution is 12.4. Let's look at one multiplying of fractions problem. Number 6 was multiplying fractions. Now, some of you understand how to cancel out some values and simplify the problem up. For those who don't, we will get to that a little bit later in the course. But for right now, we just want to remember the basic multiplication process. Multiply straight across. When we added and subtracted fractions, we had to have a common denominator. But when you multiply fractions, that's not necessary. 3 times 4 is 12. 8 times 15 is 40, carry the 4, 120, right? So now I can look at my two terms, and obviously 12 is going to go into both terms. 12 will go into 12 one time, 12 will go into 120 10 times. So my final solution would be 1 over 10. Looking at one example now of division. When you learn to divide with fractions, the first thing you're probably taught is to keep it, change it, flip it. And what they're talking about is you keep your first term, you change the sign, and you flip the second term. And what's really happening is when you are dividing, you are multiplying by the reciprocal of the second term, is the more common language. And so what we will do is we'll keep our first term, change the sign to multiplication, and then flip our second fraction. So that would become 4 over 3. And here again, those of you who understand how to cancel out terms, that will be great as you advance in math class. But we're going to keep things simple and just multiply straight across. 3 times 4 is 12. 5 times 3 is 15. Both of those would be divisible by 3, so 3 goes into 12 4 times. 3 goes into 15 5 times. Our simplified solution would be 4 over 15, or 4 over 5. Hopefully this has helped you to understand multiplying and dividing decimals and fractions.